Hi guys, welcome to the Art of Healing podcast. I'm your host, Pose.
And I'm Paris.
And today we're going to be talking about how nervous system regulation is the key to achieving your goals this year.
It's got to be done.
Paris has lost the plot. Sorry about that.
So, if you tuned into our last episode, we spoke about how to make 2025 your year. This is, I guess, part 2 of that, or at least a continuation of that, where we're going to go a little bit deeper into the nervous system regulation side of things, if you didn't get the hint in the word, in the title. But basically, we're going to talk to you about how you need to get your mind as well as your body on board when it comes to achieving your goals. Because the reality is, if your belief system isn't supportive of your goals and your nervous system isn't capable of handling the pressure, the stress, and the challenges that you will face on the journey to getting to your goals, because yes, it isn't easy, then you will fail. It's as simple as that. So the first thing to obviously go over is the belief system, your mindset, and how your mind perceives the possibility of you being able to achieve the goal. For example, when I used to set goals when I was a lot younger, I used to set such ambitious goals that it was to the point of I've never even come close to achieving the goals in my life. So my mind would naturally call bullshit. I'd be like, all right, yeah, I think we used the example last week, funnily enough, of go to the gym 5 times a day. My mind would be like, bullshit, you've never been to the gym in your life. What is this? I'm going to run a marathon this year. Bullshit, you don't even like running. I'm going to read 3 books a month. Bullshit, you don't even read. So my mind was constantly calling me out on this stuff and reinforcing the fact that actually what I wanted to achieve wasn't possible. Although it is, because I had set such a big goal, the mind said otherwise. And the same applies for the body as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, like obviously in the previous episode, we were talking about how it's always good to start small and build up to it. So, the worst that will happen is when you set a goal is that you'll come close to hitting it. But it is important to make sure that the goal is within reach and not unreasonable. Or I feel like nobody says this, because I feel like everyone is always like, oh no, it's just your mindset, or you just manifest it, blah blah blah. But manifestation doesn't happen out of thin air. This is something that you work towards. You have a clear vision and you make actionable steps on a regular basis to hit this goal. It happens over time, right? But if you have something that you want to achieve that is like 10 steps away, but you're only on step 1, you're not going to get from step 1 to step 10 without doing the other steps in between. And I think that's what you're getting at, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a process. And that's the thing to remember when you're setting goals and hitting goals is, it's a process. It takes time, and it is important to be realistic and reasonable. And I think as well, when your nervous system is dysregulated and you want to hit something like, for example, going to the gym five times a day. We used this example in the previous episode. Trying to go to the gym 5 times a week, not 5 times a day, 5 times a week, is going to be difficult if you've been 0 times a week, because you do not have the capacity to manage going 5 times a week, because it will feel like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this new thing. So when you're doing something new, you have to kind of slowly build yourself into it. You can't just go dive straight in, because there's a good chance you'll probably drown and then give up. And again, this is why people don't stick to their New Year's resolutions, because the motivation is what's getting them up. But after a while, it becomes overwhelming for them, or too much to handle, or something else happens and it throws them off. And then it's like, oh, well, I can't do it anymore. It's too difficult. It's too hard. But actually, the best thing to do is to start small and build up to it. Now, that's not to say that your end goal is ridiculous. It's just that if you think you're going to reach it in one step, that's the thing that's unreasonable. Not unreasonable, unrealistic.
Yeah. And you're setting yourself up to fail when you do it that way.
Exactly. And your brain and your body know when you're lying to yourself. So like if you're setting a goal that you know or think in your mind, oh, that's really hard to get, it's going to be hard for you to get it because you think that anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you need to set something that is easier for you to achieve and then build from there.
Like, for example, I'm going to make £1 million this year, but you've never made 10,000. Your brain and your body is going to go, hang on a minute. You ain't even come close to that.
Or you don't even have an income stream. How are you going to get you don't have an income stream. So how are you getting 10,000, let alone a million?
And listen, like, we got that goal. Trust us. Like, we're not saying don't have that goal.
Yeah,
go
absolutely.
get that bag. But you know, break it up into chunks. If you've never made 10,000 before, why not start with 1,000? Why not start with 100? Get that, normalize that, and then add a 0 and keep going that way.
And also, it's like you were saying previously, like it's about reverse engineering it. So if your goal is £1 million, but you've never made even £1,000, then let's break it down. break it down to what is more achievable and build up to that £1,000,000 or build up to that target that you have of whatever you want to achieve. That will make it easy for you. And also as well, as you're building it, you're going to be expanding your nervous system to believe, hey, actually I can do this. You're positively reinforcing to your body and your mind, hey, it's safe to do this. I can do this. And as you're going along, you're building confidence, and your brain and your body are not going to be calling bullshit to you anymore, because you're doing things that are giving you evidence and proof of you being able to actually achieve it. Whereas like if your goal was to hit £1,000,000, let's say, for example, but you've only made 1,000, but your goal wasn't 1,000, you're going to think, oh, well, this is shit. I can't do it. There's no point. But actually £1,000 is still really good. And it's on the milestones. It's on the steps to get to £1,000,000.
Exactly. Celebrate those wins.
Exactly.
But yeah, we try and do like one giant leap for mankind when it doesn't have to be that way. I think something that I used to do when I was younger, I've been setting goals for the longest time ever now, ever since I read the book The Secret, which I was about 18, 19. I started doing this self-development thing. I'd start setting goals. I'd never done any of that stuff before. I hadn't even read a book before on my own that I wasn't forced to read, to be honest. What a journey my life has been. Anyways,
now we have a library.
I would set these goals usually on New Year's Eve or the night before, because I'd be going out that night or whatever. And I would write down everything that I wanted to achieve that year. Most of it was stuff that was nowhere close to anything that I'd ever even tried to achieve before. I would do really great for a couple of weeks, and then it would all get forgotten about. Like somewhere I have these lists and these planners and these things that I've written down, all these goals, and 99% of the stuff on there I'm sure I haven't achieved, because one, probably it wasn't aligned with the stuff that I actually wanted anyway. I just wrote it down because it sounded good, or it's something that we should all have, or da da da. And the second thing being, like, I tried to do so much at once.
Yes.
All at once. Of course it's gonna fail. So not only did I have my mind saying to me, hey, BS every time I had these goals, but also my body was saying like, hey, this feels unsafe. This is too overwhelming for you. Let's stop. So here's me thinking like, oh, I'm a failure because I didn't achieve these things, or why can't I stay consistent or keep up with them? But the reality is my mind and my body wasn't on board. And that was what was causing me to be overwhelmed in the mind and the body, leading to burnout, fatigue, and just, general overwhelm, I guess.
Yeah. And there's two key takeaways from here. So the first one being is, you have to keep it simple. Because especially when your nervous system is dysregulated and you're trying to come out of that, you're trying to regulate yourself and you're trying to expand your capacity, it's important that consistency is key. And it's not that you're trying to do 20 million things at once. Pick one thing, or pick a couple of things that you think, actually, yes, I can achieve this. I can be consistent with this. I can build it into my lifestyle and go from there. And the second thing is creating safety in the body when doing this. Now, this is something that we practice quite a lot. Like when we first started this podcast, we had this like running joke because we'd always have sweaty armpits. It's a bit of oversharing that, but it's funny and it's relevant to the topic. So we'd always have sweaty armpits because we're like a little bit like anxious, a little bit like, oh, I hope this goes well. I hope you don't mess it up.
A little bit stress response.
And even though we're fully in charge of like editing and recording and all of this stuff, it's still like, oh, this is something that we've not done for a while, and it's a bit overwhelming. But what do we always do? We always take a deep breath. And over time, we're teaching our body, hey, this is safe. This is safe. This is safe. And now I'm saying, hey, my armpits are pretty dry. I don't know about you. You know what I'm saying? So, it's a process. It's a process of creating safety in your body. And when you are reaching into these things, you are crossing these lines, you are stepping into the unknown, about reminding yourself, hey, I'm safe. It's okay to do this. I'm capable of doing this. And something that we practice quite a lot is, we'll take like 4 or 5 deep breaths before we're about to start. We always do it before the podcast. We always do it before we have like a workshop or an event or something that we're doing, just to ground ourselves and remind ourselves that, yes, whilst this is new territory and it might be something that we're not that familiar with, that we've not done as much, or we're a little bit nervous, that it is safe to do it. And over time, what happens is your body starts to believe it, and so do you. So what happens is these things get easier and easier over time by just simply reminding yourself, hey, it's safe, and taking a deep breath. And sometimes it sounds ridiculous. Yes, it is really as simple as that.
Yeah, it is.
And we always say this, simplicity is key.
It is. And you've got to think about it this way, if you're doing something that's challenging, it is going to trigger a stress response in you. The whole reason that you're able to do it in the first place is the fact that your body goes into the sympathetic, gives you the cortisol and the adrenaline, so then you can do the task at hand. That's how your body should work. The problem is that after the task is done, we don't come out of this response. We stay like elevated, sweaty armpits, overwhelmed from the thing that we just did. And we don't give ourselves the space afterwards to, like you said, remind and tell the body like, hey, actually, it's okay that we did this. It's safe. Let's take some deep breaths now and down-regulate ourselves, bring ourselves back into the parasympathetic state. So then the body can go, that thing that I perceived as like an actual threat wasn't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
And next time, because you've shown me that it was safe, I might not respond in the same way, because it's just programming. It's just how your nervous system is wired to respond to these stimuli that we go through, right? So challenging task happens. First, really, we need to have the awareness of, hey, like I'm going to do something that I find hard, or something that's outside of my comfort zone, or something that like I'm not used to doing. That's the most important thing, because there's no point just doing stuff and having no awareness of it, because then you can't then on the other end bring yourself back.
Mm-hmm.
So, only you know what those things are for you, but you'll be able to tell, because it'll be the stuff that you don't find as easy doing. It's not as fluid. You start feeling
you'll
all
have this thing that we
emotions.
always say called squeaky bum.
Yeah, you'll start getting squeaky bum, which like I guess in translation means like you're a bit nervous, a bit apprehensive, a bit anxious. These are signals from your body. We turn our backs on these things and kind of try and suppress that feeling, try to ignore it, try to avoid these feelings. But really all the body is saying is like, hey, I'm feeling a little bit stressed, and what we're about to do is outside of my comfort zone, which is great because it's actually telling you that that's where the growth is. The problem being is when we ignore those signals and either avoid the task because of what's coming up for us, or we just push through the task and use brute force to do it. Because, again, modern society has taught us that when it comes to work, when it comes to goals, when it comes to doing something, just push through it. Just work. Just use all your energy, use all your mental capacity. Don't worry about how you're feeling. Ignore what your body's telling you and just get through it. And there's no point smashing through these things, forcing yourself to do something that's very challenging, to on the other end not recognize that that was challenging and then do it all again. Because all you're doing is you're just piling on the stress, piling on the overwhelm, piling up the cortisol in your body that's not being diffused. If you don't give your body the chance to rest afterwards and integrate the experience that it's had, it will forever just repeat the cycle of feeling the way that you feel. And that just leads to burnout. That's not where the growth is. So you have to stop, slow down, take your time with it. Don't listen to what society has told you of trying to do things as quickly as possible, ignoring your body and pushing through. That stuff is a recipe for disaster, especially when it comes to creating your life. Yeah, because, the thing is, when it comes to your goals, when it comes to trying to do stuff that are outside of, let's call your comfort zone, when you're in a state of stress, it stifles not only the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act, but it also destroys your creativity. So if you're trying to, let's say in our example, build a business, how can we build a business using a lot of creative energy when it's coming from a place of stress? Mm-hmm. It's never going to work. We're not going to be able to create in this place. So you have to start integrating nervous system regulation into your life generally anyway, but especially if you are planning on doing stuff you have not done before.
Yeah, and I think the thing about brute force as well, this is kind of funny. I mean, you kind of already know this story. It's kind of funny, but I don't actually know how to swim. I can't swim. I can just about doggy paddle, right? And I went to Turkey with my family on holiday a few months ago, and all my siblings are like really good at swimming. They've got all the certificates you can think of in the world. I think some of them even did like diving and stuff. And my mum used to always have this joke like, oh, well, your siblings can swim, so if you ever drown, they can look after you. So when we went to the beach, they were like, you can't swim? And I was like, no, buddy, I did not learn how to swim. I broke my arm when we were learning in school, and I never got lessons after that. So they were teaching me how to swim. And my sister had the nice, gentle approach of, let me help you. They were teaching me how to swim on my back and how to float, because I can't float. Or I can now, but they were teaching me how to do it. And my sister had the gentle approach of, lean back, I'm going to hold your head, etc., etc. But I would panic as soon as the water would like touch my ears, because I was like, oh, I'm going to drown, or like I'm going to go under. Like, surely it's not as simple as just leaning back and floating. Obviously didn't realize this. And then my brother, who's a bit impatient, he got really tired of like me panicking and like doing it 100 times. And he's like, you know what? We're just going to have to do brute force. And he literally shoved my head in the water to try and like get me to float. And I panicked. And what happened when I panicked? I started flapping and whatnot. And in that scenario, what did I need the most? I needed to know that if I leaned backwards, I would be safe. Mm-hmm. But I didn't feel safe in leaning backwards. But when you go through brute force and you try to do it, that doesn't always work, because you panic. You panic.
It's too much.
Exactly. It's overwhelming. Even if you're not showing it in that moment, emotionally, you're chronically overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is that will get suppressed in your body. Mm-hmm. Now, in my situation, it worked out all right, because, my sister yelled at my brother, and then we did it the gentle way, and I learned to float on my back and swim and whatnot. on my back, still can't do my front. Don't even ever ask me for what a breaststroke is because I really can't do it. Just don't have the upper body strength for that. But that's a different story. But yeah, essentially what happens is when you are using brute force and you are just pushing through these things, you're not actually dealing with how the experience is making you feel. You're suppressing it. You're bypassing it, which means that you're never really truly learning what it means and what it feels like to overcome the thing that you're feeling, to feel it and to let it go, because only by practice feeling it and letting it go is it going to get easier for you. But if you're brute forcing through everything, then you're bypassing all of these things. So when they come up for you in other places or other areas, you're going to have to do the same thing, and over time you will feel overwhelmed. It will start showing up in other ways, because
you'll get sick, you'll burn out.
Because whatever we suppress emotionally shows up physically, so it will show up in some other way. So yeah, it's really, really important to make sure that when you are setting goals, when you are trying new things, that you are teaching yourself that it is safe to do so and that you are capable.
And again, it probably sounds a bit silly, but one of the best ways you can do that is actually talking to yourself, either in the mind, out loud, whatever feels comfortable with, but treating your body, your nervous system as that child that needs to be nurtured and looked after, and reminding yourself, the body, hey, it's safe. Hey, it's okay to do this. Hey, we're going to be fine. Like, hey, I know this is scary. I know this is challenging, but everything's going to be okay. When you start talking to yourself and changing the narrative in your mind, the body starts listening, and over repetition, it starts to believe you, especially when you're then going into the thing that it perceived as a threat and it's coming out the other end alive. It realizes like, oh, right, I'm overreacting. I don't need to react this way. And that's where you start building the trust with yourself and your body. And then, like Pearl said, you can start doing things without it overwhelming you. Because the problem is, you know, if you're trying to do one thing and you're not practicing this thing, then it is going to show up in other areas of your life. And if you're someone that feels stuck and you feel like no matter what you're doing, you're not getting anywhere, this is probably where you need to start from. This is probably what's going on. You're in a state of dysregulation. You need to be regulated in order to start moving forward. If you're not regulated, then eventually it doesn't matter how much you try, how much you force, how much you push, what way you try and do it, you will just further the dysregulation and crash at one point.
Yeah, and I think what happens as well with a lot of people is sometimes they'll start something or they'll want to start something, but they procrastinate. And we covered this on a previous episode. I think it was maybe like episode 5 or 6 or something, where about what procrastination is and how it's really just a free state, because the thought of doing the task that you want to do is so overwhelming to you that you just decide,
nope,
I'm not going to do it. Or you'll do everything but the task, right? Even if it's something small, but the thought of doing it is too overwhelming. Now, again, the same thing applies. You just need to teach yourself, if you are procrastinating something that you really want to do, like you want to start that hobby, you want to start that side hustle, you want to start making art and sharing it with the world, or maybe you want to do something completely different and you're waiting to take that leap. First of all, there's never going to be a perfect time to do anything. Then no one on earth is going to have the most perfect conditions for the most perfect thing. You have to just do it. That's the first thing that I would say to you, is just do it. And the second thing is that, you know, the longer that you are not doing the thing that you want to do, you're wasting your potential. You're wasting sharing yourself with the world in the way that you want to and need to. And also the third thing, the more that you create safety in the body, the easier it will be to actually face the thing that you want to face and not procrastinate as much.
Yeah.
Because again, it comes back down to safety and dealing with the emotion of like, oh, this is overwhelming for me because of X, Y, Z. And once you can actually face that and feel it and teach your body, hey, no, actually, this is okay. I can do this. Because this happens to me sometimes. Sometimes I feel like I'll dilly-dally on the tiniest of tasks, and I think, because I'm becoming more conscious of it now and more self-aware of like, hey, when do I do this or why do I do this? And I can actually tell a bit more when I'm stressed or when I'm avoiding something. Or like even something as simple as like when you start a task and then you think, hey, let me pick up my phone to like distract myself. And then it's like that break in thought where you're like, hey, actually, why was I going to pick up my phone? Because I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed with this task. So hang on a second. Let me just take a couple of deep breaths. Let me just check in with what's going on. And let me not pick up my phone. And then let me just carry on doing what I'm doing. Now that I felt it, okay, I've mentally understood what's happening. I've emotionally felt it. Let me carry on with the task now, because I don't actually need to pick up my phone to avoid how stressful this task is or how overwhelming I'm finding it. I can actually just feel it for a moment, deal with what's going on, and then continue. And over time, what has that done? That's helped me create more capacity and actually to stop distracting myself as much and actually get on with things a lot quicker and a lot sooner and actually just do things. And we also have this rule as well, like this could help someone, that if you want to do something, do it straight away.
Yeah.
So if we think of something that we want to do, we'll just do it there and then, as opposed to being like, hey, I'll do it later, because that later will never come.
Funny enough, the times when we don't do that and we put stuff off and it just never happens, it's only once like the time has passed where like we should have booked that thing, or we had this thing to organize, or this person to message, do we realize that, oh, actually the reason that we kept putting it off, because we're pretty good at, okay, do that thing straight away. The reason when we don't do it most of the time, I would say, is because actually that thing didn't resonate with us. It wasn't aligned with us. It wasn't what we were meant to be doing. But we weren't being, if anything, paying attention to that side of things. Of
Yes.
our body was saying like, hey, like you don't actually want to do this, but you think you do. So that's like something, I guess, moving into 2025 that we're probably going to start practicing a bit more, is
Yeah,
listen
listening
to
to
that
our
side.
gut. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, it all comes with like the more you connect with your body, the more you understand how you're feeling, the more you're able to like check in and tune into what it is that you want, the easier these things will become for you. Like for us, there was so many times that what Paris has just described happened, and we didn't realize it because we weren't paying attention to
Yeah.
ourselves and our bodies, and not being honest with ourselves, and not being authentic, and also not listening to what our body was saying to us. You know, prime example, we get, you know, a couple of episodes ago, we were talking about certain friendships that,
Yeah.
you know, made us feel a certain way, and we knew that straight away, but we ignored it because we weren't listening. So it's the same sort of thing. There'll be times where your body will be communicating something with you, and the more you get comfortable and the more you get good at connecting with yourself and figuring out how it is that you're feeling and what it is that you're feeling, the easier these things will become for you. And
Yeah.
you'll know what to pick, and you'll know what not to pick, and you'll know what to do and what not to do.
And that's why it's so important, like, that you get your mind and your body, your nervous system as a whole on board with this. Because you think of the mind and we think, how does the mind communicate? Well, it communicates, without going into subconscious and all that malarkey, it communicates in thoughts, right? How does the body communicate? Well, it communicates with sensations, emotions, and feelings. So let's name a couple of feelings. When I need to go to a toilet, I feel that. When I need to drink water, I feel that. When I'm hungry, I feel that. When I feel, let's say, anger, I feel that. What other feelings, sensations, and emotions are there? Hundreds of thousands. So all of these things, most of them are going ignored, especially when we go into the realm of your intuition, what we call the gut. That is your inner guidance, your system telling you like, hey, this is right for you. This doesn't feel right for you. This is actually what you want to do. This is what you don't want to do. That person doesn't feel right. This environment that you're in, you should leave. But we ignore all of these signs on a daily, consistent basis.
Yes.
And it's about turning that part of your nervous system online. And this is when we say like, do the nervous system regulation, build that trust with your body. This is what we're talking about. It's on your side of things, taking action and doing what you're saying, what you want to do. But on the other side of the trust, it's listening to what your body is communicating, because it always is. You have to learn to switch on and start listening.
Yeah, and I think it's important to give yourself grace on this process as well, because there are going to be times where maybe you don't hit the goal that you want, or you don't get, you know, you don't do something the way that you wanted to do it, or things didn't work out the way that you wanted them to work out. But you have to just remember, it's okay. It's a process. It happens to everyone. Nobody is perfect, and that's okay. And, you know, just give yourself grace and give yourself a pat on the back for trying, because that's the most that anyone can do. You know, just put in the effort and go from there, you know. And in relation to the gut thing, it's funny because for us, this has been something that has been really like something that we've been developing over the last 3 years, like listening to our gut. And every time we haven't, or we've had that gut feeling and we've ignored it, we've learned like, oh yeah. And there's been times,
should have listened.
there's been times where we've like had a conversation about it afterwards and been like, oh, why didn't I listen to that? So I had this thought, and you were like, I had that thought too. And
by George, next time we're going to listen to that thought.
You know, there was a while back where we were gonna host an event somewhere, and the person whose venue it was, or we spoke with them. We knew this person from before, and Paris was leading the conversation because he was the one making the phone call. But like the minute the person picked up the phone, this like thing went in my stomach where I was like, I don't want to work with this person. Something's not right here. And as this person started talking, as he started like having the conversation with us, this feeling like got bigger, but I just kind of like ignored it at the time. And we didn't really say much, did we? We kind of ended that call, and we had some like dates and stuff to think about. But like there was just something about that conversation and how it went down, how that wasn't sitting right with me, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I just had this like feeling in my stomach, right? And then later on, we didn't end up putting on an event at this venue because the person who was in charge of it essentially was being a little bit difficult. But the reason we found out later on that he was being difficult is because he wanted to steal our event, which he did. And then when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I told Paris, I was like, I had this feeling in my stomach that like, whilst we were having the call with him, that we should not be working with this person. We should not be talking to this person. This like a part of me really wanted to just be like, end the call. stop talking to end the call.
Yeah.
Like that was my gut reaction. But you know, sometimes you think, oh, I'm just being reactive. But like look back to that. Yeah, okay, telling Paris to end the call there and then probably was a bit reactive. But the feeling that I was feeling was 100% correct. And we learned that like a few weeks later, we're like, that's why you were being difficult. So yeah, your gut's always going to be communicating with you. You just need to listen and obviously do it from a balanced perspective, because like in that situation, you know, reacting to it was not in that way was not correct, which is, I mean, I didn't do it, but that was my immediate reaction. But had I like ignored that reaction and listened to what my body was telling me and communicated that to you earlier, then, you know, we would have known sooner, hey, hang on a second. And we wouldn't have spent time deliberating on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Yeah, it's true. But lesson learned.
You live and you learn.
Listen a little bit sooner. And that's just that it's a practice, you know. It's something that unfortunately we're not born with, but it is something that we can acquire. And it's just the practice of listening to your body, listening to the emotions, listen to the signals, listen to that feeling you have. Sometimes it can be wrong. It's not about figuring out if it's right or wrong. It's just about listening to it and, you know, decoding the message. And over time, as you practice it, the messages get louder, the messages get clearer, and your understanding gets a lot wiser, let's say, and you start moving from this place of, hey, my mind can't figure out why I'm doing this, but my body feels like it's a fuck yes. And because my body says fuck yes, I'm going to trust my body. And guess what happens? It works out. Because what we do is we lead with our minds without getting the body involved. And that sometimes works and can work for some things, especially when it's like strategic thinking. But there's this whole element that we're missing, which is the body. And when you start incorporating that body, you actually hardly need the mind for a lot of the decisions that you'll make in life. Because, for example, when your body says, I'm hungry, do you then go in the mind and start contemplating and overthinking like, oh, am I actually hungry? Is eating right now a good idea? Or should I wait till later when I'm starving? Or like, oh, maybe it's something else. Maybe I'm not hungry. Generally, no, you're hungry. That's what your body's telling you. You don't argue. But when it comes to our gut, we doubt the gut. We try and talk ourselves out of it. The mind starts getting involved and we tell ourselves stories. So yeah, lean into your gut more and enjoy the journey that is life. If you want to achieve your goals this year, then you must get your body and your mind involved and start regulating your nervous system.
What he said.
So yeah, you know, you can start with a couple of simple practices. I think one of the main things that you can start doing this year is move with intention. So whenever you are trying to do something, before you do the thing, just pause for a moment, take some deep breaths, and then set the intention. For example, we're doing this podcast. Before we get started, I would take some deep breaths and I go, I'm going to show up authentically and do the best that I can do. This simply is priming the mind and the body to say, hey, this is what I intend to do with my time right now in this moment. And it also regulates the body and allows it to become safe, because it realizes, despite how I might be feeling in this moment of, oh, I'm about to do a podcast, I've now told myself that it's okay to be doing the podcast. So start practicing this thing. Honestly, when you do whatever it is, can be working out, can be doing work, can be talking to a friend or going to see someone. It doesn't matter. Just move with intention and then things will start unfolding in a better way for you.
And also as well, when you're moving with intention, you're very present.
Yeah.
And when you're present, it's easy to be more calm and more centered, and you're not operating from a state of stress. You're operating from a state of calm. And, you know, that's what we want. When you're doing something, when you're setting goals, when you're achieving them, when you're going after what you want to move from a place of calm and centeredness rather than like rushing, stressing, trying to do a million things at once, because you're going to get better results.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to just realize that your body is like a computer. It's completely programmable. The mind, the nervous system, the body. When you start moving with intention, you start being direct with your actions and you start moving with an energy that's from ease instead of pressure and force, everything will unfold for you. The body will start rewiring itself, reprogramming itself, and it will start showing up for you in ways that you didn't think were possible. The goals that you had will be achieved. Those actions that you struggled to take now are easy, and you will just have more joy in your life rather than this stress of, I need to do this, I have to do this, I've got to push through, I have to make it happen. Yeah, you know, make shit happen, but don't force it to happen. It should never be from force.
Yeah. And I think this is something important to remember, that when you're on this journey of setting goals and achieving them, it's important to not worry about what anyone else is doing. I think a lot of the time people often get discouraged by seeing someone who is ahead of them or doing better than them. And I think all you need to do there is have a little mindset shift, in the sense that just because someone's achieving something doesn't mean that you can't also achieve it. In fact, what it is evidence that it can be achieved. So what you should do really in that moment is look at it as inspiration, as like, hey, actually, that's great. I would like to achieve that also. thank you so much for showing me. Thank you so much for sharing.
Mhm.
And, you know, looking at it that way rather than thinking, hey, I'm behind. Oh, I wish I was that far ahead, because you're on that journey too. The difference is your journey is different to theirs, and how long it takes you to get to X, Y, Z, or maybe you're going to stop on another destination on the way, is different for everyone. So no one ends up at the same place in the same way. Everyone has a different journey. And it's important to remember that and not allow yourself to get discouraged on this journey. Because I think, especially in society, there's so much pressure to be a certain way or to achieve certain things by a certain age. You know,
Mhm.
I remember reading this thing years ago where it said something like, if you're 30 years old and you're wanting to do a 4-year course, but you don't want to do it because at the end of it, you're going to be 34 and then you're going to be starting your career, well, that's ridiculous, because in 4 years' time, you're still going to be 34. So you might as well just do the course. So it's
Yeah, do the thing.
so do the thing. Do the thing. It doesn't matter. Time is always going to be coming and going and passing. And the reality is, you shouldn't let that hold you back, or anyone else hold you back from what you want to achieve, or allow that to discourage you.
It's true. It's true. And just fall in love with the process. Stop putting your goals on a pedestal of, once I achieve this thing, I'll be happy. Once
Yes.
I get to that place, then I'll do X, Y, and Z. Once I'm blah de blah, then I'll finally chase my dreams. All these things don't exist. You're putting your happiness at a time, at a place that's in the future. When they say like, oh, you know, enjoy the journey, what they mean is become present, love every moment of the
Hmm.
day, be grateful and be in awe of it. When you start doing these things, your life naturally opens up for you, because you're no longer projecting yourself into a future that doesn't exist. You are in the present moment creating the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say also as well, you know, romanticize the process. This
Mm,
Paris and I are really big on having fun and enjoying every moment of every day in every way possible, right? And you know, even something like our weekly meetings, we
mm,
romanticize them in the best possible way. Like, we'll go to a cafe, we'll get our favorite coffee, we'll have our favorite croissant, and if we're not going to the cafe, we'll have a little cafe day at home and do the exact same thing. And I think it's
mm.
important to, like, you know, enjoy the journey and enjoy the process and romanticize it in the best possible way, because it's like Paris said, if you think you're going to be happy because you get to XYZ, then you're chasing the wrong thing. Enjoy the journey, give yourself grace, have
Mm.
fun on the way, and when you get there, you get there, and it'll be great either way.
But on that note, we'll end it there. Thank you so much for your time. We hope that you make 2025
Your best year yet.
your best year yet, and we'll see you next week. Ciao for
Ta for
now.
now.